All right, guys. So before we get started on today's show, we just want to thank our sponsor, Chexi. Chexi is a all-in-compass wallet where you can pay your rent, and it's perfect because you can pay your rent with your credit card. You can get Amex points, Aeroplan points, cash back. So basically what you want to do is go to their website. You can click the first link down below in the description, and you can type in how much rent you pay. You can see what kind of rewards you can get through your credit card and see if it works for you. They're a great sponsor, and it's a great idea as rent is such a big expense for a lot of people. So thank you so much, Chexi, for sponsoring the show. Without further ado, let's get into it. Brooke.
Hi.
What's happening?
Busy couple days. OMG. Offer presentations everywhere.
Yeah, I think it's a theme of like, okay, we have to drop the price very low so we can get multiple bids to get to the price we're trying to get to.
I think too that in my markets especially, which is Halton and Hamilton, because I'm not too sure if it's happening a lot in the downtown Toronto and Etobicoke markets, but I'm seeing it a lot in Burlington and Hamilton when you have a really good product. And I've been saying for a long time that you see listings on the market not really done well, or almost not a lot of effort put into the listing, right? You see a lot of clutter, you see, the little things that could have easily been done just kind of, overlooked. So when one is done well and is obvious a standout, it's almost like the buyers flock to that one. And for the sake that there's not a lot of inventory. And I mean, there's still, if you look at the market, there's tons out there.
Yeah.
But if you look at, hey,
things get stale.
Yeah. And if somebody's looking for a specific product, like, for example, if you're looking for a townhouse or a semi in Burlington, you don't find a lot. You see a lot of newer builds, North Burlington and those new developments, but in the core of Burlington, there's like two up, right? So one comes out that looks nice, is staged, and, the little things have been done properly. Everyone's flocking to them. So today, this morning, 25 offers on a semi listed in Burlington at $869.
Where was it?
So it is South Burlington, near Brant, but still kind of north.
So kind of down. Yeah, the downtown area.
Yeah, and that's one of the best areas.
Yeah, there's not too many townhouses, complexes down there. It's usually really old wartime bungalows, and then now condos, obviously. Well, Burlington's done a better job than Oakville, I think, at building up their downtown to have people actually like use it.
Yeah,
than Oakville, it's a ghost town downtown.
Totally. But yeah, it's crazy to see last night in Burlington again. So north of the highway in Brant Hills, I had a listing, got 5 offers last night, sold it with 5 offers, $40K over. And then
was it listed previously?
Was it listed previously? These guys bought it 2 years ago, and I set them up for, hey, the market hasn't really done anything. Like, it's kind of gone up and down, but pretty much stayed flat from 2 years ago when they bought it. They haven't really done much to it. So they had to move. They had a baby, moving out toward London to be closer to family. So
that'll be nice.
Yeah. So in that case, because they don't have really too much market appreciation to go off of, we, did minor things. They spent $5,000 in repainting everything and redoing the floors. And then we staged it beautifully. So it stood out on the market, and then I priced it accurately of what the value is worth. But because there wasn't a lot of inventory similar to it, we attracted most of the showings, got 5 offers, and sold $40K over asking. Now, that doesn't necessarily happen all the time. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the market is picking up so much. It just means there's not much to choose from. If there's a buyer sitting with a 1.2 budget and I want something nice in, close to Brant.
Yeah.
So multiple offers happens in 2 different scenarios. Obviously, when rates are low and everybody wants a house and there's too many buyers, but then also when there's no inventory for a certain product and and people are on the sidelines waiting for a specific one, that doesn't necessarily mean the buyers are crazy active throwing offers everywhere, but if they've wanted a certain product for a long time and one finally comes up, that gets them off their feet.
Yeah, I think too, like historically, we've seen the market really pick up at the beginning of the year because I think people are like, new year, let's get going. That's why I kind of like to list around this time because a lot of people wait to the spring and then you kind of get this influx of inventory.
Yeah.
Your neighbor's selling, you get anxiety, stuff like that. Like right now I wouldn't say it's like, banana zone out there, but if you have a right product, you stage it, you price it right, you're going to get some traction, I think.
Yeah.
But it's going to be hyper local, right? Like if you list a condo, it's not moving, unfortunately.
No.
But the freehold market, it feels like it's almost 2 different markets at this point.
Totally. Well, really, when you see the market as a whole, perform well, it's because rates are good enough that the first time buyers that are getting into the market for the first time typically go toward condos as your first purchase, right? And then the condo buyers that have been there for a little while upsize into a townhouse, and then the townhouses sell the semis, and the semis sell the detached, and that's your typical, staircase of your market and how it works. And then you have the detached downsizing and kind of like that. So when first-time buyers, when condos aren't necessarily affordable, that takes out a lot of the first-time buyers because they can't bypass those first prices of what a condo is worth compared to a townhouse.
Yeah, so I think the condo market is getting hit. I think too because you have a lot of inventory completing, but also like you just said, the first time buyer is not really seeing the value in it compared to renting, and then also the investor is not seeing it at all.
Yeah,
because obviously you're going to be very cash flow negative
in a condo.
In a condo,
sure.
Yeah. So I think that's where it's a bit.
We did the math too. Condos. So when we saw condos used to sell well, right? Especially in Burlington,
pretty.
Yeah, because there is a lot of first, right. But the math on buying a 1-bedroom, 1-bath in Burlington, average, you're going to be spending $550. If you're putting down, let's call it 10%, right? Okay, so $55,000. So your mortgage is almost $500,000. You're going to be paying about, what is that in a mortgage? $2,500.
Yeah, probably $2,500. Then your condo fee,
$500 extra. Yeah. Now you're at $3,000 plus tax, utilities, and insurance.
Yeah.
And to rent the same place, you're paying $2,400.
24. Yeah. You're
so
probably like $1,000 delta. Yeah.
There's still too much of a gap. So the more that gap closes,
you could see some people pop back in.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because I think people still do have the dream of owning their own place.
Yeah. I think the freehold is just the idea that people really want, because I feel like the stepping stone isn't there like it used to. Like I know when I think of like my business, I'm like, okay, well, usually people move every 5 years, but like even from 5 years ago, some areas have not appreciated enough where people are going to pay land transfer, pay the commissions, pay the lawyer, and then move up, right?
Oh yeah.
Versus, years before, and what we've seen over the last couple of decades is like it would appreciate enough. People would run the numbers. Oh my God, it makes sense. I can make a move upwards.
Yeah.
And then I think it's kind of the same on the downside too.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people on the downside are like, well, that's like, 150, 200K. It's a lot of money, but is it life changing? Is it in like,
I have a client
maybe I'll just stay.
Yeah. That's doing that right now. Her house is it's worth about 1.7-ish in Streetsville, and she wants to downsize. She wants to retire. And then we're looking at bungalows, smaller bungalows, like in other cities, but there's even nicer townhouses can be over $1 million. So it's not enough to downsize because the spread, like townhouses are closer to detached.
For sure. And like to have someone like that live in a house all their life, go to a condo is not an option. No. Yeah. No.
A lot of people downsize into a, bungalow.
Yeah.
Semi-detached, or maybe a bungalow townhouse, but just like your normal stacked townhouses or condos. No.
Yeah. They just won't do it.
And you don't see large condos anymore.
Yeah. So let's see. Okay. So we're just talking about what we're seeing in our market, which is like Halton and Toronto, but here's Treb's forecast. So Treb does have a lot of markets. Like they have east, like out to Pickering and Hamilton. Like there's a lot of different boards out here. So the Toronto Real Estate Board released its market outlook and year in review report on Wednesday morning, and it points a picture of a buyer-friendly 2025. A lot of what we've been talking about on this podcast is a buyer-friendly 2025. So according to the Real Estate Board, a well-supplied market in the year ahead is expected to quell home prices in the GTA, keeping the annual growth rate below that of inflation. Treb forecasts that the average selling price for all home types combined, so condos, freeholds, detached, whatever it might be, will reach $1.147 million this year, which would mark a moderate rise of 2.6% over 2024. So they're seeing a rise. It's pretty much going to be on par with inflation. We've always seen historically like 7 to 9%. So it is a slow growth year. Price growth might be more evident in single family market segments. Kind of what we're talking about. The condo market will probably get hurt overall. And a big thing a lot of people aren't talking about, is having a conversation with my friend about this, is just the condo market in Toronto.
Yeah.
The pre-construction madness that could hit the market. A lot of power sales are going up. A lot of people are like renting
Power of sale condos?
Yeah, like I've seen the power of sales have ticked up, like through Treb combined, it's ticked up.
Is there a metric that you can find listings if they're power of sales?
I think it's in the description. So
Yeah,
if you
so there's no
put,
metric to actually search a list of them though, unless
you
a
have to
realtor.
search the keyword power of sale.
Okay.
I actually don't know. I've seen a chart before. I don't know if that was how they measure it. I'll look into that. But the big risk though is, like we said, the condo market, right? Like the people who bought pre-con. I'm still really worried about that. And this year it does worry me as things come to completion.
Yeah.
What happens to the deposit? People are going to go to court.
Yeah.
You know, what happened? Because like technically the banks own these big projects for the most part, unless a builder has enough money to fund the project itself. So where do we see this kind of issue happening where enough people in a building aren't closing?
Right.
Like there was this one, she was like a top realtor in Brampton. I don't know, this lady shared a story, and she bought a pre-con and it did appraise. So it was one of the few that actually appraised, but it's going to run her $4,000 a month to pay the mortgage, you know, the insurance, the taxes, and the condo fees, and she can only get like mid 2000s on the rent.
Yeah.
So you're very cash flow negative.
Well, she's a top realtor in Brampton,
and she's a top realtor. You know, it's kind of like what happens to the people that this top realtor sold the project to, or I don't know if she did, but you know, there's a lot of realtors out there who just do pre-con. So I wonder where this leaves, you know, the normal person who just wanted to make an investment.
I wonder, so when they were projecting rents, was it a matter of people just didn't project what the mortgage would be at the time of completion and what you could rent it for? Because I know rates were like 2% when a lot of these people bought these pre-construction. Were they anticipating rates to still be 2%? Did they not run it at 3 or 4?
It was willful blindness, in my opinion. It was just, you saw everyone line up. Your cousin made a bunch of money years before. They didn't even close on it. You can just assign it for, you know, I think there was a lot of empty promises if realtors were selling it, because, you know, in a way it worked so well before, but really all you had to do was look at two things. What's the building beside currently getting per square foot, and how much more am I paying? Mm-hmm. And then you had to look at rates are at their bottom. What happens if they double? What happens if they triple? What's my mortgage going to look like then?
Right.
Just few things that people don't do when they feel that pressure to make quick money, in a sense, right? Because you're borrowing against your primary residence usually. Yeah. You're putting it down on a HELOC, and then you're going to make triple that. Yeah. And that's what people actually did. Like I know a lot of guys at my gym who did it years before, who just told me about it. Like when I was first getting into the market, they're like, oh, I brought this pre-con in 2012, and it, I sold it and signed it. I didn't even whatever. So that's just a segment of the market that I'm worried about.
I've had a lot of calls come in. Hey, Brooke, I want to get out of this condo. They've either moved into it because they had to, or whatever happened. I need to get rid of this. Can you sell it where we break even? And it's like, no,
not even close.
No. So, one in Burlington, it's like, hey, you're not too far off. But if we're calculating, the land transfer that you paid, the closing costs that you paid, the levies that the builder charges upon completion, selling costs in getting rid of it, that's upwards of 50 grand right there. Can we break you even? No. So it's like, how long do we have to hold on to this for? And then we run the numbers of like, okay, carrying costs, if it is an investment. So they say, okay, I don't want to take a 20K loss. I'm going to hold it. But okay, how much are we losing in carrying costs if we hold it for 6 months? Yeah. Right. Is that 20K? Or do we just get rid of it now and then maybe move the money to something that's also potentially down in value, where that will bring your money back up in the long run? Because sometimes moving your money laterally from one investment to another, it's not necessarily a loss, even though on paper it looks like a loss if you're only looking at what you're selling. But if you're moving it to something else that has potential, like more growing room, one of those is going to bring the value is going to come back in one of them either way. So sometimes doing the lateral move and taking a little loss for the potential gain on where you're going to move your money to, if you're doing it in the same market, is smart. But a lot of people that I'm like, I can't do it. I have a couple people that have bought North Oakville call me and say, hey, can you potentially sign this? And I look at it, it's like,
have you seen how many condos are up there?
Oh, it's a different city. I grew
just
up
the way
near
people
there.
build, the way they build them too.
I know.
It's just, and that's the tough thing about pre-con is like,
Yeah.
you can't see anything,
Yeah.
right? Like they show you the nicest
Oh,
one
oh,
in the
yeah.
showroom, but it's like,
Yeah.
then you get in there, it's 500 square feet, it's carpet, it's laminate.
Yeah.
Like you got to put
There's
the
the
upgrades
builder
into it.
grade finishes are horrendous.
It's terrible.
Are horrendous.
And it's like you have the same 7 units that need to
it's so
sell,
bad.
and it's
Yeah.
just not moving.
And so there's a couple people that have their money tied into these investments with a couple investment firms that are looking to get their money back early, which the investment firm then comes to me and says, hey, can you look at assigning her unit because we can't give her her money back. She's in contract. So then I look into it and I'm like, you can't assign it nowhere close to where you bought it, unfortunately. And I say this and, give them option. I'm not just going to say, hey,
Yeah.
if you can't do it, you're on your own.
Scoot, yeah.
Like there's options, but in a compassionate way, it's like the people we're up against is the people that are willing to take a loss. And a lot of people, when they look at going to assign it, they don't want to just write off their money. So to assign right now for a profit is going to be extremely difficult unless you have something that is boutique style or very different or in a location that's prime, something like that, because there's tons of investors that are, willing to walk away from their deposit but want to assign the owing on closing. So take over the closing, but the deposit, the 20% that I've already put down, I'm willing to walk away from. I just don't want to close because I either can't or I'm dry.
I've heard it's even hard though to get to that point.
Yeah, I've seen a couple. For example, we have a buyer that has an offer in Milton on a townhouse assignment listed. It was listed at $699. We have it tied up for $680. They bought it for $675. So now those guys are going to have, and we're putting the levies and the closing fees back on the seller.
Okay.
So they've bought it 4 years ago, and they're going to. And it's not horrible, right?
It's not a huge loss.
It's not a huge loss, but if you look at the time value of money too,
it's
that
terrible.
20%, 120 grand or whatever, more 100. Let's call it 150 grand. Yeah. If you had invested that in like the S&P 500 or something over the last 5 years, how much more of a loss? And obviously these are not things that you want to just put up in front of somebody's face, but you think about these situations where
the opportunity cost is gone. Yeah.
But that being said, and to stray away from the pain points of the market and how a lot of people are unfortunately in this situation, there are options that we take you through, and there are parts of the market that are performing well. And I am 0 to 100 busier the last week compared to December and January. Yeah,
for sure. February's picked up. Just the one thing here. So Treb thinks that the sales are going to go up. So the one part that I agree with, and that what worries me, and we talked about this earlier today, the real estate board warns that U.S. tariffs on Canadian exports would reduce the demand for a wide variety of goods and services, which could lead to layoffs and stifle purchasing power. So more aggressive interest rate cuts from the Bank of Canada could help offset some of the tariff impacts. The issue with the tariff impacts is that if they happen, and some already have, so that's our next topic, but it leads to job loss. And if job loss happens, doesn't matter what the Bank of Canada drops their rates to, unless you have money and unless you can service the mortgage. Like if you can't service your mortgage anymore,
doesn't matter what the rate
is. So that's a little bit of a worry of mine. And I think a lot of people who are thinking of making a move is the same thing. Like uncertainty is the worst part of this whole thing, is like the Trump tariff. So what's going to happen? Will it decimate our economy? Will he stop? We don't know. And trying to guess what Trump's going to do, you might as well go buy a lottery ticket. It's so unpredictable. Yeah. So I think that's the one thing I agree. I think the market will stay pretty steady this year unless we have a huge trade war with the U.S. That's the one thing that, it's worrying. We have an election this year and there's a lot going on still.
Right.
There's just a ton in the news about it. So
right.
I think that's the one kind of scary thing. So what Trump did do is Trump imposed a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum imports from all countries, which includes Canada.
And we are the biggest exporter to them with steel.
Yeah, so Canada's a top supplier of both steel and aluminum to the United States, and Canadian producers rely heavily on the U.S. market. Around half of the steel products in Canada and more than 90% of the aluminum products are currently sent south of the border, with a combined export worth $35 billion last year.
Okay, well, let's also look at both sides. So how much inflation took the prices of these up over the past 5 years during COVID? Are they experiencing such a high profit margin where that 25% tariff can be incorporated, where there's still massive multi-million-dollar industry, billion-dollar industry.
Yeah, it's a billion-dollar industry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
like
So
even
these
Hamilton, right? We're talking about Stelco
yeah.
is right there, and that employs a ton of people, right? Like it's a
Right.
huge plant.
Right. So it's like there's two sides because yes, it does incentivize, like it'll create more country, like them buying from the States, right, instead of Canada, because we'll have to factor in that price to Americans to have some of that tariff paid for. So it does get put back on Americans.
Yeah, it's got to go somewhere.
So does that cause inflation to go up in that sense?
I think it will cause inflation to go up in the States, but then I also think it's going to hurt Canada. Like even I was watching the news and the lady came on and she said this would be detrimental to our steel industry. Which is obviously a bit worrisome.
It is, but I wonder just how much, like, of course, these companies and these industries don't want it to happen. And of course, nobody wants this to happen. We want to be, right? But you look at even the grocery stores. Remember all those strikes that happened with like Metro and everything because their profit margins were astronomical, where because inflation took the prices of everything up and
their margins weren't big, but their like overall profit went up a lot, if that makes sense. Because like, the margin was like 1% to 2%. Food doesn't have a big margin.
Right.
But their profits were high because prices went up so much.
Right.
Yeah.
And wages stayed the same.
Revenue was high.
Their revenue was
profit high. I don't think the profit margins were that much better, but their revenue was high. So, that's the thing that kind of worries me is like, what's Trump's end game here? Like, it felt like we kind of got away from the tariff thing with the fentanyl stuff.
Yeah.
But they still haven't appointed the fentanyl czar. I honestly think Trudeau pissed him off a lot when he said that about the Kamala not becoming president because she's a woman. He said
I didn't even know about this.
Yeah, he said that months ago. Yeah. Because Trump beat Hillary Clinton and then he beat
Trump's
Kamala.
ran against only women.
Yeah, so it was kind of...
I guess no, he ran against
Biden. But
true, okay.
Biden beat him and then he ran against Biden, but then Kamala came in.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like I do like how Canada's talking about building the West-East pipeline, how we need to have LNG as an actual liquefied natural gas, like having these different markets where we're not just so reliant on the US and we can make more money for the country. It just sucks that it took, our ally to say it when like Canadians wanted this. Most Canadians did want us to use our energy. And it kind of sucks that like the Liberals shut it down for so long, Stephen Guilbeault and Trudeau, and said there's no business case for it. Now all of a sudden we don't have our best buyer. Now there's a business case for it. I like how Canada's coming together, but there's a little bit of like, hey, let's try and work with Trump.
Right.
Because, and I know a lot of Canadians don't want to hear this, but the US economy is 10 times bigger than us. Their army is the strongest in the world. They have the best army and economy in the world.
Yeah.
You don't really want to become their enemy, I don't think. So,
No.
yeah. And I don't think Canada can function if they're not one of our customers.
No.
So
And
Trump wants something. He's a deal maker.
Yeah.
Let's figure out what he wants.
Yeah.
Get the right people to do that.
Yeah.
And then I think we can just like kind of get over this
I
mess.
think it'll, be a little bit clearer once we have a different leader that Trump respects.
He has said so many times that he wants Canada to become that 51st state. Like he won't stop saying it. It's like
it's never happening.
It's not. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. I don't think. I mean,
no, that's not. It's never happening. Canada's not just amalgamating itself and being a part of this. It's ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous that people think that will happen.
Yeah, it's a crazy statement.
No country is just gonna say yeah.
Yeah.
I understand Canadians being in pain and thinking that could be the saving grace, but no.
There's a podcast episode. Sam Cooper. He was like a journalist for a long time, and he's been on this fentanyl thing for a long time, and he's done a lot of research on it. And I know how they only say only 1% of fentanyl goes to the States. There's so much fentanyl corruption in Canada. Like I watched the whole interview.
Oh.
And it's like really eye-opening how bad it is in Canada and how much we do need someone to step in.
It is really scary because
it just takes a little bit to kill somebody, which is the crazy
and you don't know too.
Like there's been a bunch of like lab busts in Vancouver, and I think if I'm understanding this right, is that it comes into the ports in Vancouver and only 1% of those containers get looked at.
Yeah.
And then 0% of the trains get looked at because they just don't have because they just don't have the manpower to do it. They don't have the budget for it, which I thought was pretty crazy. But hoping that, I am hoping that, okay, we're sending billions to the border. Let's get I don't know why we don't have a fentanyl czar already appointed. Like that should have been already done. Like it's like we're coming up on 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
Let's get someone in there. I don't know. Yeah.
I'd love Justin Trudeau to somebody follow him with a camera. Like, what do you do? Can you start vlogging your day on YouTube?
Oh my God. I mean, he's done the most in the last couple of weeks than I've seen him ever do, but I think his back was just against the wall. But anyways, the Liberal Party is March 9th, so that's coming up.
How are the polls?
Oh, so that's the next one here. This is interesting. I'll read it for you. So 18 to 34-year-old Canadians are overwhelmingly conservative.
Yeah, it makes
Young
sense.
people want some hope. I think Pierre's hitting on a lot of notes that a lot of people like. While the boomers in Canada are overwhelmingly liberal, so 65 plus.
Well, it makes sense because Pierre Poilievre wants to, I think, retire at, what was it, like 65 versus 60? I don't know.
I actually said I was going to look into this, but I didn't do it.
Yeah, so it makes sense because even though, obviously the last 8 years our country has not been run properly. There's obviously a divide with if you're 60 approaching retirement and want to retire, and then conservatives coming in will change your age of retirement and pension and all of that. Obviously, they're going to want policies that suits them, right? So there could be two different people that experience the last 8 years very differently.
So yeah, that's true. And I also think that a lot of older people watch CBC. And I'm just going to say it. I watch it too. And they are very much on this train that Pierre is Trump 2.0. And that's what people believe, right? Even like the mainstream media in the US went after Trump all the time. Just like all these negatives. And they're like, Pierre never puts out any pieces. Like if you go on Pierre's YouTube channel, you can see exactly what he plans on doing. Mm-hmm. He puts out 6-minute, really good edited. Like I wish I could edit as well as some of these people edit. Mm-hmm. On what his plans are, like what he would do with Trump, what he would do. He just came out with a video on what he would do in northern Canada to protect the border there. Mm-hmm. He said that he would stop foreign aid and he would spend that money on the military up there. I think that's a great idea. Let's not spend more money. Let's cut it from somewhere and put it somewhere else.
It's interesting. It's kind of off topic, but did you see the map where it said like how many people live in different countries, how much of the world population are in little sectors of the world map?
Yeah.
And how it's like, oh my God, like
very dense.
Very dense. So then I wonder about the real estate market there. Like if you have 1 billion people in Ontario-sized country, what is happening? Like you can't support all those people do they just have, and they're a third world country for the most part.
You're talking about.
So how do they support housing there? Wouldn't that be like crazy through the roof to buy a house with that much
I think they all just live on top of each other.
Yeah, like what goes on there? How does that get supported?
It's a different world out there, that's for sure, than what we know. And like we're lucky for that reason.
Yeah, because we're so isolated to like know what's going on here and be like, our country. But then then I was like really just looking at, countries like India or, like all those Thailand, although like there's so many people there, and then it's a lot of poverty. Poverty is way higher than what it is here, and way, way, way more people. What happens with housing there? How does their whole system work?
Yeah.
And then I wonder, they
don't have much income, so it's hard to drive up house prices without any income.
Yeah, I guess so. I was wondering, like, what does it look like there?
Yeah. I've seen those like shoebox condos, like where they like lived on top of each other.
Did you see the ones in Hong Kong?
Hong Kong, yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's crazy. It's just, you just go to sleep.
Insane. It's just a bed in like a tower. It blew my mind that's world. Real life.
Yeah, different world. That's for sure. So, what were we talking about there? Oh, politics. Yeah, so I think what I am seeing with the polls is that Carney's getting a little bump, like we said.
Is he beating
anyone but Trudeau?
Freeland? Yeah.
Yeah, I think Carney will be the next.
So he'll be interim prime minister until the election happens then?
Until
so
we
will
resume.
he be able to put policy into place is the good question, because he's technically not an elected prime minister, but he's interim.
I don't think there's a lot you can do. I think there's a bit you can do, but he can't until Parliament resumes. And if Jagmeet sticks to his word, which I really hope he does, as soon as Parliament returned, there would be a push to a non-confidence vote, and then we'd go to the polls. So I think Carney would have a very brief stint as prime minister from March 9th to the 24th, and then until the election finishes.
So until the election, are we technically able to put policy in place or not?
Well, it
really?
has to go through Parliament. And if nobody's sitting, if nobody's sitting, then there's not much policy you can put through, unless the only way is that like Poilievre and Singh and the Québécois agree not to force a vote, and that they just go back to Parliament to pass stuff to help Canadians during this time of uncertainty if tariffs do come in.
Right.
But I think the tariffs are still avoidable, like a blanket 25%. We just need to take action. So we will see. But yeah, I think that's kind of a good summary of what's going on right now. It's fun. We can't get through an episode without talking about Trump right now. It's just he's affecting Canada very much so, and maybe it's by design. But quickly on that. We always talk about these tariffs that Trump's putting on. And me and you were talking about this, that provinces have about 7 to 20% tariffs on each other.
Yeah, that's
so
weird.
I know Trudeau and Pierre came out with like, okay, we need to remove these barriers now.
I've never noticed that.
I didn't know, but a lot of businesses came out and they're like, yeah, like it's very hard to trade with each other because of these tariffs. They said it was easier to do business in Europe than it was to do it in our own country.
I don't even know how, sorry to say, how that even works.
I know.
Because if I'm buying from a Canadian business that's operating in Vancouver and I order clothes, which I've done, I'm not paying it. Like I just pay the price. Is it incorporated in? And how do they pay these tariffs? And who's like, it's all quite.
Yeah, I don't think I think it's more like business to business versus like consumer to business.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. There was like different like laws on driving a truck at a certain time and stuff like that. You learn a lot when you kind of dive into it. Like I've learned so much about the Canadian energy sector and our pipelines from all this. It's been an interesting. I wish more people knew
like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm just learning on my treadmill.
Learning about where the pipelines go.
Yeah, literally, that's what he said. I'm like, what are you doing?
That was interesting.
I just spent 2 hours learning about Canada's pipelines.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
But yeah, so that is a topic that they should be debating and taking away is these provincial tariffs. Like that's crazy. We should be able to.
This is a new thing. You know what? The crazy thing, they released the spending in America, like government spending in the States.
Oh, the U.S. aid. Have you seen?
Yeah, isn't that wild? So they're going through it, and it's just absolutely nuts. And then I didn't look too much more into this, but didn't they wipe Canada's spending? Like it by accidentally got deleted.
It apparently came off the website,
okay.
But I think it said it crashed because so many people were looking at it. But Canada is. The States is wasting a lot of money on stuff, that they could spend at home. That's the way that I look at it. Some people look at it different, and Canada's doing the same. Like there's a lot of money going to programs across the world that when you read the headline and it's all public, you start to go, wow.
Yeah.
Could that not be spent at a food bank in Canada? Could that not be spent on hospitals, on doctors in Canada? I think we got our own problems here at home. Let's focus on those first before we can really help the world.
Right. It's like donating food to other families in need while your children are starving.
Exactly. It's not far off of what you're saying.
Like I understand, but like also make sure that you're in a position where you can give. Otherwise, what are you doing?
And like the people up in arms about Elon's Doge team figuring all this out, it's like, why are you upset? What's your incentive to be upset, right? Like how could you be mad about looking into where the government's spending people's hard-earned tax money?
Right. It's because it is a public thing, right?
It is,
government spending, but nobody looks. And now that things like this are coming out, I think more people are going to actually want to know. Does it give them like even like we don't have power over it, right? To know where government spending is going. Is it just more of the more people know, the more backlash they're going to get where they change?
I think so. Like, I think the carbon tax, every liberal politician is now saying we're going to get rid of the consumer carbon tax. That's why politics is a participation sport. Like you can't just take your foot off the gas because then stuff like this happens.
Yeah.
Stuff that majority of people don't want. And if we truly live in a democracy, then they should remove it.
Right.
If enough people don't want something, and like even if I want something, but a majority of Canadians don't, then I have to say, hey, there are more people don't want it than do. So it sucks, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll see. But anyways, it'll be good to see election platforms. We're going to hit on all the housing platforms that the Liberals have, NDP has, Conservatives, whoever it might be. We'll hit on all those platforms and try and, I think everyone should get out there and vote.
Yes.
It truly is a privilege to have.
There's a massive amount of population of people that don't vote.
Yeah. So hopefully we can get as many young people out to vote, because I think more young people tune into our show.
Yeah. No, it's so important.
It's so important just to have
and just to have the correct sample size of the country, what the country wants.
Yeah, the polls suck because they're like the sample size is 1,000 people.
Right.
It's kind of hard.
Yeah. You would be surprised at how many people don't even know what's going on too. Like unless you're following podcasts, or like Instagram gives a lot of like, updates and stuff. But if you're not on social media, you don't watch the news a lot, and you're just kind of, which a lot of people do.
Yeah, they got kids, they got sports.
When you're so involved with it, like we are, we think everybody knows it, but it's crazy. Like I bring it back to the Jimmy Kimmel when he went down one of the busiest streets in New York City after Trump had won, and went up to random people and were like, "Are you voting?" And they're like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Who are you voting for?" And they like, but the election already happened, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, holy, how many?
Maybe it's a better way to live.
To be honest, maybe
it's just easier.
Ignorance is bliss, but yeah, it's crazy how many people don't know, right?
Yeah, I know.
Is what's happening. And then you also go broader outside of the GTA and Vancouver and Alberta, really, in major cities. How people are living is fine in Canada. They have a great life. They're house prices are $200K. They're making normal wages.
They used to be Alberta. Yeah, they used to be cheap, not anymore.
Yeah,
but it's still cheaper than us.
New Brunswick, like I have a couple clients that moved out to New Brunswick from Burlington, and they bought this massive house for $500,000. Their wages are similar.
Sold the farm, $1.2 million.
Right,
Bought
and
something
then
for $500.
You look at Newfoundland, you look at PEI, and it's just like.
They don't have as many jobs though, so that's something we have to obviously specify. They don't have the high paying jobs like we do here.
No, you're right, but their house, so it's almost relative though. It's almost better to have, let's say, the same job there, you're making $80,000, here you're making $100,000, but your house price is $1 million versus there it's $200K. So now
it depends on what your biggest expense is. Yeah,
right.
Newfoundland is I've been there. It's beautiful, but it's a lot more expensive for stuff because it takes so long for it to ship there. Right. Yeah. That's one thing I noticed. I was like, oh my God, like the cost of living here is high. And they're like, and my buddy's from there. He's
taxes
like,
are higher out in the Maritimes too. I just noticed when I was buying a coffee, like Tim Hortons large coffee is $2.30 here, and it was like $2.55 or something there. Where I'm like, oh, yeah, why is it 25 cents more at this Tim Hortons? Cheaper. Maybe because if anybody's in Nova Scotia listening to this and I'm wrong, it could be because the airport Tim Hortons sometimes charge more. Could have been that. But I think it actually was more, maybe not by that margin of 25 cents on $2. Yeah. But that could have just been the airport. But I do think it is higher there.
Yeah. Anyways.
And so the last point. My parents are they're just getting back from Florida, and when they were there, they were saying that because our dollar, even though our dollar is so weak, actually it doesn't necessarily matter about the dollar being so weak, but when they're there, the cost of everything is similar to here, if not more. Like you go to a grocery store and a box of cereal is $7 US. Okay. Yes, it's going to be much more expensive for us to convert the dollar and then buy it. But just for your normal American, like the cost of everything is way higher, and their dollar being much stronger does actually make it more expensive than what it is here. So the cost of goods and services are more expensive than what they are in Canada because their dollar is stronger and it's the same price tag.
Yeah, I think a lot of people voted for Trump because grocery prices were so high.
Remember when cereal was $2?
Oh my God, the good old
days. Why is cereal $9? I like cereal. It bothers me.
You always bring up cereal.
Yes, because it's a pain point in my life.
Yeah, you like cereal. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be here next week with more updates. And if you guys want to book a call with Brooke Rye, you're thinking about making a move, you want to talk about real estate, click the first link down below in the description. We'd love to chat with you and help you. And no pressure, it's free. So if you guys want to make a move or you're thinking about doing something, click that link. All right, guys, thanks so much. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye.